Hi and welcome to this episode of the JA Malta Podcast dealing with the Work Readiness series. Today we have two more guests discussing what employers should bring to the table. So we've discussed various aspects of the job hunting process, from interviews to CVs to contracts, and now we're looking at the life as an employee within a company. So today with me I have Vanessa and Loredana. So I'll start off with asking you for a brief introduction. Vanessa?
So hi everyone, I'm Vanessa. I'm an employer branding and communications strategist. I basically support organizations in becoming more attractive employers. That's the short version of
Excellent.
What I do.
Loredana?
Hi, I'm Loredana Mallia. I work at UI. I take care of operations. I've been there for 5 years and I'm very happy to be supporting Jay.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, EY is one of our main partners, in fact, on various programs. So, as you know now, we've been having various episodes online. We'll start off by breaking a bit the ice with some quick fire round questions. So, self-care and spa vouchers or a free gym membership?
Definitely spa vouchers for me.
Me too.
Continuous feedback or periodic performance reviews?
Continuous feedback.
Same for me.
Annual company big retreat or monthly outings?
Annual retreat.
I would say monthly outings.
Open workspaces or assigned desks and offices?
Open workspaces for me.
Same for me.
Excellent. And karaoke night or escape room?
Karaoke night.
I'm a singer actually, but I wouldn't go for karaoke. Maybe let's go for the escape room.
Excellent, excellent. So, as I said before in my introduction, we'll be discussing on aspects that the employers can bring to the table and how employees can make their choice better in terms of an employer, and also making their life easier at work, since we spend most of our time at work. Loredana, I'll start off with you with something I saw on your LinkedIn profile. You say, when you take care of your people, the business will take care of itself. And I think it's pretty much sums up also the whole point of this episode. What could you say about that quote, and sort of, and how can an employer or the environment of the employer actually contribute to this?
So, to me, that is the most important thing that I keep in mind every single day. And if you read my LinkedIn profile, I say that people need three things. They need to feel they count, they need to feel they connect, and they need to feel they contribute. So that then they will have a sense of belonging. And I do believe that when you think of all these things, if people feel that they, have a sense of purpose at work, they will definitely work harder, they will give you better results, and they will feel more trusted. And at the end of the day, for example, in our company, it's all about our people. We sell no product. Our service is made from the people and depending on the people. And that's why we keep on thinking about and making sure that we have high-performing talent. Because at the end of the day, our profit is made from our people. So to us, this is the core of what we do. And I do believe that, it is our culture, making sure that our people are first in everything we do, in all the decisions, in all the decision making, because people, they need to feel that sense of belonging. They need to feel that they want to aspire for new career changes.
So that if you feel that is sort of what employers should strive to offer to employees,
yes.
That sense of belonging,
yes.
and ownership.
Yes, in fact we say whenever you join, however long you stay, the exceptional EY experience lasts a lifetime. And we encourage people even when they're leaving. It's like in today's world, if people decide to make a change, which is fine, we always tell them, as long as you remain ambassadors of EY, you're fine, go to the industry, go and learn, and maybe you'll come back. And we do have people who have come back, with more, skill set. They may come in a higher grade, because we believe that people need to make it's something.
This attitude, sort of the employer attitude and the mentality of an employer, Vanessa, is associated obviously with the employer branding, which is now your bread and butter. You're close, or I think you actually just celebrated 1 year working as in this field. Why did you feel you needed to do the step, or what gaps have you seen in the attitudes, or where do you feel contributing the most to employers?
Definitely a gap in attitude. So not every business has the same understanding that half your product is human, even if you are selling an actual product. So definitely there is a gap there. And there is also a gap in... So I believe there is an understanding that we need to do more for our people now. But what happens is that everyone tends to do the same thing without understanding who they are as an organization or what makes them different. So I believe employer branding, this is what it brings. It helps them align their HR initiatives to attract, to engage, and to retain with who they really are. Right.
So we're talking about the culture here, right?
Yes.
The culture within the firm, of how it can live. You have bringing people together with different cultures, different mentalities, different walks of life, bringing them together to work together.
100%. I always like to bring the understanding of a community, right? Or of a culture, a nationality. Okay, what makes us Maltese? What makes us British? It's behaviors, it's our norms. So it's very important for an organization to recreate that. It's like an unspoken language. And you can only do that not through your benefit system or through your marketing system. You can only do that through your leadership culture. That there is an unspoken language between leaders that are role modeling behaviors that are coming from the values of the company.
And since this is sort of ingrained within the leadership structure, how can a new employee check this before actually choosing between one employer and the other? Sort of, because you mentioned this is not a marketing campaign, but how can an employee choose, and maybe also then have a discussion on how can the employer showcase this in the recruitment as well?
Definitely, one should choose their employer, based on what they see externally, but more importantly, how their experience of the interview has been, particularly if ideally they are being interviewed by their future manager. We know that 70% of the employee experience is actually based on your direct manager, right? More than on the entire organization. So certain questions around what does this leader value? Can they tell you an experience that they had, like a difficult experience they had with an employee? So the interview isn't only for the employer towards the employee. The interview is also, I would say, predominantly, especially in this market, for the employee. But if the employee's focus is going to be only on numbers, only on the benefits and only on the salary, then they're missing out on predominantly most of what it's going to be like to work there.
And Loredana, sort of, do you see this happening in interviews, and how do you showcase the mentality you just described before to prospective employees? How do you go about that?
I think what's also important is how people talk to each other. So we're in a very small island. So, like the recommendation, one of the things that we ask people, for example, when we have engagement scores, is around, would you recommend this place to be the best place to work? And that is a very important, engagement score that we discuss, even at boardroom level, to see how people actually think of us. Because at the end of the day, that's what's important, not the reality, not just the perception.
Yes, yeah.
Another thing that we also ask is how engaged do you feel at EY? And it's important, when you have like over 80%, that means that people feel engaged. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have things that we need to improve like all companies, but at least there is that feeling that people feel engaged. I also think that during interviews, it's important that we share with the people our values. And I always tell people, it's like, it's a gut feeling even for you to join us. So if your values, your personal values match the values of the firm, where it's for us, for example, what's very important is to have courageous integrity. For us, it's important to do the right thing. The attitude is something that I always recruit for. The technical skills, you will learn. That's fine. Even if you don't have all the technical skills, you will learn. But the attitude is very difficult to change, because if you have whatever the attitude you have, it's something that unlikely will not change. Those are the core values that we look for, doing the right thing,
Yes.
Even if you make a mistake, it's fine, but we'll change it. What career progressions would you want to do? Would you like to take, step up the ladder? Would you like to do secondments? It's very important for us to understand what that person wants, because it's useless engaging someone, onboarding someone, and then realizing after 2-3 years that this person wanted to do other things, and we've pushed him to do something else, because at the end of the day, they'll end up leaving.
Yes. Yeah. On this point, if I just may add, I really love the fact that you mentioned the term engagement. We have this idea, or let's say we use terms very interchangeably in this space: happiness, satisfaction. We are at work to be engaged. What does engagement mean? Engagement means that your needs are being met and you are going the extra mile. So the responsibility of the employer is not to make you a happy person in your life. You are responsible for your happiness between work and between your personal life. The employer's responsibility is to bring the best out of you, because the role that you have is playing to your strengths. And that makes you engaged, and ultimately it makes you as an employee perform. So an employer's responsibility is this: to support you in identifying your strengths and performing at your best. So we need to not confuse this for happiness. An employer is not responsible for an individual's happiness.
So linking to this, sort of one thing that I feel a lot of people are asking for more and more is feedback. So feedback on my work, on how I'm doing, my performance, and not simply because it affects my increases or my bonuses, but because I want to feel engaged and showing that what I'm doing adds value. Is that something that you also find common yourselves, or how do you relate to that?
I think that millennials, one of the things that they look for is definitely feedback. They want the feedback.
And Gen Z.
Exactly. And I think we should be giving them feedback. But one step before that, I think what's also important is that once a person is onboarded, we need to agree objectives. So the person needs to understand what he's expected to be doing, rather than, then we'll discuss that in 6 months' time. So the first thing is, what am I expected to be doing? The second thing is, let's agree on the objectives. Let's make sure that they're like, smart, measurable, blah, blah, blah. Smart objectives, then we agree, and then we need to have one-to-ones. So to me, that's one of the most important things that I keep telling managers, that one-to-ones are important between manager and employees, because at that time, first of all, the one-to-ones, to me, we split them up into 3, so they need to be regular. One, the one-to-ones in the beginning will build the relationship. So let's not just talk about work, a check-in point. How are you feeling? Have you settled in nicely? Do you have any issues? Do you have any mental health issues? Further on as the relationship grows and there's trust. So I'm checking on you as a human being. I care about you and I look at you. That's the first thing. The second thing is around performance. Let's look at the objectives. So do you have any issues? Are there any KPIs that you're not managing? That is fine. Let's understand. Let's review. Let's check. Let's maybe take off some tasks, and maybe I'll give you something else to do. So we discuss performance. Then I do believe that twice a year at least it's important to have a career conversation. So what you're doing in line with the expectations that you want? Because at the end of the day, I need to make sure that you're happy. So feedback to me is very important. I would also say, and in Malta, I think it's there's this mentality that we shy away from feedback. Because probably the manager is the friend of the colleague, and then we go out together in the weekends, and I want to be nice with you, and I do not have the courage sometimes to give you the feedback as it is. Which then, that is not, it's a disservice to the person, because I am not helping him become a better person. Yes. So I do believe that when we're giving feedback, there are a lot of different ways, with praise sandwich, and they're telling you something good, and then they're telling you something. To me, it's like, let's discuss feedback. These are the things that you're doing well, and these are the ABIs, the even better ifs that you can do better. And I give you examples. So it's not just, even when we're writing, all different companies hopefully have performance management tools. If you're a big company, you'll have SAP, or you'll have, Google, for example, has, they ask feedback for their managers. Everyone has different types of, tools. But at the end of the day, what I do believe is that if I am giving you feedback, it's not just Matthew is very hardworking, he does, he's diligent. I need to give you specific examples at that point
how I demonstrated those qualities.
And if if you're doing something well, I just come, and recognize, good, well done for that piece of work. But if there's something that you can do better, there's the even better if, and I have to tell you.
Yes.
If I respect you enough to for you to become better.
If I may add on this point of feedback, we underestimate the amount of stress someone can go through when they don't know where they stand. And we have decided that workload makes us stressed, that all these other things make us stressed. And we are missing a fundamental point that as humans, we want to know where we stand. We want to know what's expected of us. And if organizations build this muscle, I can assure you that all these wellness programs that are now the next big thing will take a very different perspective. There is a study, I should have got it with me, that has just been carried out. I read it in the New York Times, where they actually found that this was the source of stress. Not workload, not hours of work. I don't want to be misinterpreted that workload and hours of stress don't create stress. But they can be mitigated a lot with knowing what's expected and communication. We tend to communicate and forget the why and forget the context. So we delegate, and some managers are very skilled at delegating, yet they miss one part of it. And when we know the why, and when we know what is expected and why it's expected and where it fits in the bigger picture, we're more relaxed. We can handle more.
Thanks, Vanessa, for that. Before continuing to the next part, where we go to more specific measures that can be done, I just wanted to have a bit of a break with a life story you can share, or maybe a light-hearted moment or something that happened in your life when it comes to career. I don't know, the career path or anything unexpected that happened to you that you could share as part of this.
So basically something that's changed my career, maybe. I used to work at HSBC, I used to work in HR, and I always wanted to go and do a secondment somewhere. And I had 2 young children, so it was not that easy. And once I was speaking to someone on the phone who was the head of HR in Luxembourg, and he was telling me that he needed someone to replace a maternity cover for like 6 months. And I just said, this is it, and I'm just going to do it. And I actually went to
Grabbing
Luxembourg.
the moment.
Yes. And when I look back, it's like it was a life-changing moment in my life for so many different things. It was difficult to leave 2 children. I used to come here every 3 weeks for a weekend. But the experience, not just the technical, but it's like the experience even from a personal development, it was amazing, because that opened a lot of avenues then for me, that sometimes you just say, this is it, and I'm just
taking the plunge to go.
And I didn't even know where I'm going, like what I was going to be doing, nothing.
Vanessa?
With me, a particular moment that stands out is I was in a particular organization, and somehow the relationship between my manager and I wasn't quite there. And this for me was a first. I was always someone who had a very good relationship with my teachers. always with my managers, and this was a very, very difficult relationship. But the irony is that this manager actually introduced me to employer branding, and it was my first pure employer branding project. So I guess in life, it's very ironic that even the very negative and the very difficult career situations can lead
teach
to
you
positive.
And lead you to positive things.
Exactly.
Two interesting words of advice as well to take on. So moving now to specific measures. So we mentioned already the well-being, the mental health. What are you seeing as the things that work or don't, or maybe less working in terms of packages or support that we can offer employees from a mental health perspective?
I would say, so from a mental health point of view, I think I would split it up into two. So the first one is how we support the people. So it's very important that the language that we use is very, it's like if someone is going through a difficult time, the language that we use sometimes may offend people who are going through a difficult time. So sometimes we don't really realize that we use the word like, I have a breakdown, I'm crazy, and all these things. So I think it's very important that even in our management team do not use those words, particularly at the place of work, not to upset people, to make it a safe space. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we offer the support. So what's important is that we have first aid, mental health aiders, to support people to understand, not to be the psychologists, but at least to understand if someone is changing behavior. We try to understand immediately to encourage them to accept help. Because the most important thing when it comes to mental health, 1 out of 3 people go through a difficult time in their life, mentally. So it's okay. And I think the most important thing is for people to accept that it's okay not to be okay. Yeah. So talking about it is, it's like literally you try to stop the stigma. We encourage, so for example, what we do is we encourage people to go to Richmond Foundation, and we would not know who's going, so it's totally confidential. Then the other thing I think is more around prevention. So the support when it's happening, and also the prevention to make sure that people, for example, there are boundaries of they don't work too much long hours.
Work-life balance as well.
Work-life balance, more around, making sure that they physically they find time to spend some time with nature, so talking and educating people, because in today's world it's like so chaotic that sometimes, it's very easy to get lost.
I think for larger organizations, of course, the, let's say, structured approach to this is more doable, right? There are more resources, but it's not to say that smaller employers cannot do certain initiatives that also have benefits. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to having a relationship with your employees. Having that time to have a conversation, as Loredana said, to check in with them, not only as a worker, let's say, as an employee, but also as a human. And once you pick up that a person is not going through maybe the best time of their life, there are things that you would do to any human, right? So you would check whether they could maybe come in a little bit later, have a little bit of more flexibility, perhaps even paying for them to see a therapist might, in the bigger picture and scheme of things, not actually cost the business as much, but cost that employee a lot. Maybe the finance part is a limitation for them going to see someone professional. So I do believe that as long as an employer has that awareness, and as long as a leader has that awareness, then it's very automatic and natural what they could do around this.
Changing a bit the topic now, more on, we mentioned engagement, really being truly engaged at work, that you're doing something you like and you're doing also impact. When it comes to also training and upskilling or reskilling now, are these structured usually, or should an employee seek out to find out what's the policy, let's say, during interview stage? Is it something that should be discussed at that stage?
So learning is a big topic at the moment, especially with Generation Z, who are so learning aware, and who are not perhaps at times also not so focused on the formal learning, i.e. going to university, getting a degree. Learning is a very important part of the workplace. Now, oftentimes, and this is perhaps my personal take on this, is that we are very classroom training obsessed, and employers are using this as part of a benefits kind of package. Now, there is always space for a classroom training, yet we know through research that a lot of learning happens through self-learning and through learning from others. So my take on this, once again, is not a case of budget per se, but bringing it to the person's attention. To Loredana's point around the one-to-ones. How many times do we use a one-to-one and saying, I don't know, Peter, on that project you worked on, what can you tell me you learned from it? So basically taking a minute to realize how much one would have learned, because oftentimes as employees, we're so lost in the busyness that we forget that actually we're learning all the time, and we don't need that training in the classroom because we would have spent the last 3 months learning that skill that probably the classroom isn't even going to give us. So the communication and how we position it in the organization is, I think, fundamental on this point of learning.
And on this point that we're learning and really adjusting to what we're understanding and how we learn. For example, at EY, it's an audit firm, one of the big four. When it comes to training, a topic that we discuss also at JA is financial literacy. I'm taking the point here is, do you also offer training and skilling, things which are not specifically related to their job, but things that help them with their well-being as well, like financial literacy? Is that something that these topics are also discussed?
Yes, so basically, as Vanessa mentioned, we have a lot of different types of learning, and learning can be, some can be structured. We have the mandatory training. So for example, there is mandatory training on financial crime, which everyone has to do, it's like mandatory. Then there's the other type of training, depends on where you're working, whether it's technical, soft skills, etc. Something that we also encourage, we have Learning Fridays. So once a month on a Friday, we try to encourage people not to have so many meetings in their diary, to try to find a slot and self-learn, depending on Udemy and all the different trainings that we offer. When it comes to financial literacy, yes, to me, it's like it's split. Well-being is like there's the physical, there's the financial, there's the mental. Financial literacy, yes, for example, what we do is we do lunch and learn. Once a month, we bring people, different banks, different insurances, to speak to people about how they can open an account. For example, we have a lot of foreigners, so they need to open an account. So we get different banks to speak to them, what they need to do, what documentation they need to prepare, so for them to be able to open a bank account. We also speak to people, for example, to think about financial literacy, especially when they're young, to have, to start planning for their retirement, teach them how to start. Now, of course, we have to keep in mind, and that's one thing that we discuss when they're young. In today's world, there's a lot of financial anxiety. Yes. So we do understand that if someone who's 25 years old, the first priority is to buy a car, the second priority is to buy an apartment. So most likely, let's be honest, it's not the most important priority at that time when they're 25 to start planning their retirement. But in reality, if they start early, that's it. If they start at 40, it's not the best. The best outcome will be if
are there requests about pensions, or therefore
it's something that we encourage, but it's not something. I've never had someone asking me whether we offer a pension. We do offer it. We match fund it so that we can, because the idea is to teach the employee how to save. But it's not like we don't have 100% take up. They would prefer to get other types of benefits. Yes. But it's something that, we keep on trying to educate the young people. But we do understand that they have other priorities.
Yes.
I think on this point as well, Matt, I forgot what we mentioned, but we mentioned that in the interview, it's also an interview for the employee. And so is learning. right? We are responsible for our learning as individuals. It's not the company alone that is responsible. So we too can look for potential outlets of how to learn, and oftentimes, even if there aren't structured programs like in the case of Loredana, I'm sure that there would be employers who would be happy to support us in our learning if there was a cost related to that.
And there are tools which, for example, don't cost money. So if you're a small firm, you can encourage people to have a personal development plan. You agree on 2-3 objectives, learnings. You say, I want to work on this technical, I want to be, I want to learn Power BI, and this year I want to understand, how to have a challenging conversation. So it doesn't have to be something expensive. It could be that, I know that Vanessa can really, challenge, she spends times negotiating, procurement, and I can spend some time with her and she can teach me. So it could be free of charge without, having to reinvent the wheel. It just needs planning and time to think that it's important.
And an element of also mentorship there involved from previous employees in the job.
In fact, what we do as well, what I was going to mention before, is that when we onboard someone, we give him a counselor. So that counselor is normally the manager, not always, who would be the person who would be supporting him during his time at EY. So they could be discussing career, progression, promotions, etc. We also give that person a buddy. So that buddy is the person who is same grade or one higher, so someone young, so I can feel comfortable. And that person will try to give him the best possible support in the few days and weeks. Like simple things like how to use a photocopier, where the bathroom is, what happens on Friday, like what's this lunch and where's the connect center, little things that for us it's like we're always talking, and talking jargon and all. But for the new people, it's like, sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming.
Lastly, also, I wanted to discuss this because it's also a topic close at heart at JA is entrepreneurship. And when we're dealing with entrepreneurship, it's not simply me opening up a business or running on my own, but it's also being entrepreneurial, be critical, be creative, finding solutions. Is that something that should be promoted, and are employers promoting it, or should people basically do as they're told? Sort of, where is the balance there?
What comes to my mind with this is the association that we have with entrepreneurship, right? Because the brain automatically goes to business. And to your point, entrepreneurship is so much more. It's creativity, it's solution focused. And I do feel that if someone has been involved in the arts or has had a hobby for a long time since they were a child, or they're in the arts, these are the type of skills that they bring to the workplace, right? So on this topic, once again, we come to the individual. That as an employer, of course, you can encourage these skills, and work leads you to becoming more solution focused, dealing with things, finding, solutions to problems within a team, and teamwork, and how to communicate. Yet, I do believe that if you grew up in environments outside of school, perhaps you lend yourself more to these skills.
Yes, and also maybe to us, for example, what's really important is that people ask questions to find good answers, that people are curious. How even when they're working with clients, they need to understand, first of all, the client's need, and then maybe they can suggest something else to the client. So it's not like, do this task and that's it, because otherwise, how can they become even better? Yeah. So we have to push them. One of the things that we also speak about is also the speak up culture. We encourage the young people and whoever is working with us, just to agree. Sometimes we agree to disagree, to find a better solution. Because if we don't push ourselves, then it's like we'll continue doing what we've been doing along the years. Yeah.
So thanks, Vanessa and Loredana, for that discussion here. I think it was very interesting to see different perspectives on this topic. If I could just take maybe 2 takeaways to summarize a bit, or key points that I took on. One is the responsibility of the employee as well. It's not always the role of an employer, but someone needs to be self-critical as well and see the ownership and responsibility of one's actions, and also the aspect of looking at the workplace more of a community, where you have support structures, where you can speak to people and get feedback, and also take responsibility of your actions and speak up when things aren't as you planned or as you thought, so that things can get fixed or adjusted accordingly. So thank you once again for joining us. I'll also thank the partners for this podcast, the VOPS scheme, and the Minister for the Voluntary Sector and Inclusion. And I'll thank you for joining us for this episode that we just witnessed here, and join us for the next episodes on this podcast series. And don't forget to also follow us on our social media, where we, as always, discuss things related to work readiness, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. So again, thank you, and see you next time.
Thank you for the invitation.